Hare Krishna. Welcome back to our online Bhagavad Gita reading retreat lab. So, in the last session, we have completed till verse number 14 of the chapter number 7, and we have seen the different modes of nature and how they are controlled by Krishna. So, we must therefore surrender to Krishna. So, in today's session, we are going to start with the verse number 15 till verse number 19, and we are going to see what are the four kinds of impious persons who do not surrender to Krishna, and we will be also seeing the opposite, that is, four kinds of pious persons who do surrender to Lord Krishna. So, without any delay, now let's move to the Veda base. So, we'll be reading only the translation and the purport. And also, you can see in this print, we'll be having side by side English as well as German language. So, chapter number 7, verse number 15. Translation: those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of the demons, do not surrender unto me. Purport: it is said in Bhagavad Gita that simply by surrendering oneself unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Krishna, one can surmount the stringent laws of natural nature. At this point, a question arises: how is that educated philosophers, scientists, businessmen, administrators, and all the leaders of ordinary men do not surrender to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, the all-powerful personality of Godhead? Mukti, or liberation from the laws of material nature, is sought by the leaders of mankind in different ways, and without great plans and perseverance for a great many years and births. But if that liberation is possible by simply surrendering unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then why don't these intelligent and hard-working leaders adopt this simple method? The Gita answers this question very frankly. Those really learned leaders of society like Brahma, Shiva, Kapila, the Kumaras, Manu, Vyasa, Devala, Asita, Janaka, Prahlada, Bali, and later on Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Sri Chaitanya, and many others who are faithful philosophers, politicians, educators, scientists, etc., surrendered to the lotus feet of the Supreme Person, the all-powerful authority. Those who are not actually philosophers, scientists, educators, administrators, etc., but who pose themselves as such for material gain, do not accept the plan or path of the Supreme Lord. They have no idea of God. They simply manufacture their own worldly plans and consequently complicate the problems of material existence in their vain attempts to solve them. Because material energy, nature is so powerful, it can resist the unauthorized plans of the atheists and baffle the knowledge of planning commissions. The atheistic plan makers are described herein by the word duskritinaha, or miscreants. Kriti means one who has performed meritorious work. The atheist plan maker is sometimes very intelligent and meritorious also, because any gigantic plan, good or bad, must take intelligence to execute. But because the atheist brain is improperly utilized in opposing the plan of the Supreme Lord, the atheistic plan maker is called Duskriti, which indicates that his intelligence and efforts are misdirected. In the Gita, it is clearly mentioned that material energy works fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It has no independent authority. It works as a shadow, moves in accordance with the movements of the object. But still, material energy is very powerful, and the atheist due to his godless temperament, cannot know how it works, nor can he know the plan of the Supreme Lord. Under illusion and the modes of passion and ignorance, all his plans are baffled, as in the case of Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, whose plans were smashed to dust, although they were both materially learned as scientists, philosophers, administrators, and educators. These Duskristinas or miscreants are of four different patterns as outlined below. The first one, the Mudhas, are those who are grossly foolish, like hardworking beasts of burden. They want to enjoy the fruits of their labor by themselves and so do not want to part with them for the supreme. The typical example of the beast of burden is the ass. This humble beast is made to work very hard by his master. The ass doesn't really know for whom he works so hard day and night. He remains satisfied by filling his stomach with a bundle of grass, sleeping for a while under fear of being beaten by his master, and satisfying his sex appetite at the risk of being repetitively kicked by the opposite party. The ass sings poetry and philosophy sometimes, but this braying sound only disturbs others. This is the position of the foolish creative worker who doesn't know for whom he should work. He doesn't know that karma, action, is meant for yajna, sacrifice. Most often, those who work very hard day and night to clear the burden of self-created duties say that they have no time to hear of the immortality of the living being. To such mudhas, material gains which are destructible are life all in all, despite the fact that the mudhas enjoy only a very small fraction of the fruit of labor. Sometimes they spend sleepless days and nights for pretty gain, and although they may have ulcers or indigestion, they are satisfied with practically no food. They are simply absorbed in working hard day and night for the benefit of illusory masters. Ignorant of their real master, the foolish workers waste their valuable time serving Mammon. Unfortunately, they never surrender to the supreme master of all masters, nor do they take time to hear of him from the proper sources. The swine who eat the night soil do not care to accept sweet meat made of sugar and ghee. Similarly, the foolish worker will untiringly continue to hear of the sense-enjoyable tidings of the flickering mundane world, but will have very little time to hear about the eternal living force that moves the material world. So now we'll move to the second one. Another class of Duskritis or miscreant is called Naradhama or the lowest of mankind. Nara means human being and Adhama means the lowest. Out of the 84 lakh different species of living beings, there are 4 lakh human species. Out of these, there are numerous lower forms of human life that are mostly uncivilized. The civilized human beings are those who have regulated principles of social, political, and religious life. Those who are socially and politically developed but who have no religious principles must be considered Naradhamas. Nor is religion without God religion, because the purpose of following religious principles is to know the supreme truth and man's relation with him. In the Gita, the personality of God has clearly stated that there is no authority above him and that he is the supreme truth. The civilized form of human life is meant for man's reviving the lost consciousness of his eternal relation with the supreme truth. The personality of God has Sri Krishna, who is all powerful. Whoever loses this chance is classified as Naradhama. We get information from revealed scriptures that the baby is in the mother's womb, an extremely comfortable situation. He prays to God for deliverance and promises to worship Him alone as soon as he gets out. To pray to God when he is in difficulty is in a is a natural instinct in every living being because he is eternally related with God. But after his deliverance, the child forgets the difficulties of birth and forgets his deliverer also, being influenced by Maya, the illusory energy. It is the duty of the guardians of children to revive the divine consciousness dormant in them. The 10 processes of reformatory ceremonies, each enjoined in the Manusmriti, which is a guide to religious principles, are meant for reviving God consciousness in the system of Varnashrama. However, no process is strictly followed now in any part of the world, and therefore 99.9% of the population is Naradhama. When the whole population becomes Naradhama, naturally all their so-called education is made null and void by the all-powerful energy of physical nature. According to the standards of the Gita, a learned man is he who sees on equal terms the learned Brahmana, the dog, the cow, the elephant, and the dog eater. That is the vision of a true devotee. Sri Nityanand Prabhu, who is the incarnation of Godhead as Divine Master, delivered the typical Naradhama, the brothers Jagai and Madhai, and showed how the mercy of a real devotee is bestowed upon the lowest of mankind. So, the Naradhama, who is condemned by the personality of Godhead, will again revive his spiritual consciousness only by the mercy of a devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in propagating the Bhagavad Dharma or activities of the devotees, has recommended that people submissively hear the message of the personality of Godhead. The essence of this message is Bhagavad Gita. The lowest among human beings can be delivered by the submissive hearing process only. But unfortunately, they even refuse to give an oral reception to these messages. And what to speak of surrendering to the will of the Supreme Lord? Naradhamas, or the lowest of mankind, willfully neglect the prime duty of the human being. Next comes the third one. The next class of the Kriti is called Maya Prahata Jnanaham, or those persons whose erudite knowledge has been nullified by the influence of illusory material energy. They are mostly very learned fellows, great philosophers, poets, literates, scientists, etc. But the illusory energy misguides them and therefore they disobey the Supreme Lord. There are a great number of Mayaparta Jnana at the present moment, even amongst the scholars of the Bhagavad Gita. In the Gita, in plain and simple language, it is stated that Sri Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. There is none equal to or greater than him. He is mentioned as the father of Brahma, the original father of all human beings. In fact, Sri Krishna is said to be not only the father of Brahma, but also the father of all species of life. He is the root of the impersonal Brahman and Paramatma. The super soul in every entity is his plenary person. He is the fountainhead of everything, and everyone is advised to surrender unto his lotus feet. Despite all these clear statements, the Mayapurita Jnana deride the personality of the Supreme Lord and consider him merely another human being. They do not know that the blessed form of human life is designed after the eternal and transitional feature of the Supreme Lord. All the unauthorized interpretations of the Gita by the class of Maya Jnana outside the purview of the Parampara system are so many stumbling blocks on the path of spiritual understanding. The deluded interpreters do not surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, nor do they teach others to follow this principle. Fourth one, the last class of the Kriti is called Ashuram Bhavam, Asritaha, or those of demonious principles. This class openly atheistic. Some of them argue that the Supreme Lord can never descend upon this material world, but they are unable to give any tangible reasons as to why not. There are others who make him subordinate to the impersonal teacher, although the opposite is declared in the Gita. Envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the atheist will present a number of illicit incarnations manufactured in the factory of his brain. Such persons, whose very principle of life is to decry the personality of Godhead, cannot surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. Sri Jamunacharya, Alavandru of South India, said, "O my Lord, you are unknowable to persons involved with ethical principles. Despite your uncommon qualities, features, and activities, despite your personalities being confirmed by all the revealed pictures in the quality of goodness, and despite your being acknowledged by the famous authorities renowned for their depth of knowledge in the transcendental science and situated in the godly qualities. Therefore, first one, grossly foolish person. Second one, the lowest of mankind. Third one, the deluded speculator. And fourth one, the professed atheist. As above mentioned, never surrender unto the lotus feet of the personality of God as in spite of all scriptural and authoritative advice." Now we will move to the next verse. Chapter number 7, verse number 16. Translation. O best among the Bharatas, four kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute purpose. Unlike the miscreants, these are adherents of the regulative principles of the scriptures, and they are called Sukritinaha, or those who obey the rules and regulations of scriptures, the moral and social laws, and are more or less devoted to the Supreme Lord. Out of this, there are four classes of men: those who are sometimes distressed, those who are in need of money, those who are sometimes inquisitive, and those who are sometimes searching for knowledge of the absolute truth. These persons come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service under different conditions. These are not pure devotees because they have some aspirations to fulfill in exchange for devotional service. Pure devotional service is without aspiration and without desire for material profit. The Bhakti Rashamrita Sindhu 1.1.11 defines pure devotion thus: Anya vilasata sunyam jnana karmadi anabhatam anukulyena Krishna anushilena bhakti uttama. One should render transcendental service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service. When these four kinds of persons come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service and are completely purified by the association of a pure devotee, they also become pure devotees. As far as the miscreants are concerned, for them, devotional service is very difficult because their lives are selfish, irregular, and without spiritual goals. But even some of them, by chance, when they come in contact with pure devotees, also become pure devotees. Those who are always busy with creative activities come to the Lord in material distress and at that time associate with pure devotees and become, in their distress, devotees of the Lord. Those who are simply frustrated also come sometimes to associate with the pure devotees and become inquisitive to know about God. Similarly, when the dry philosophers are frustrated in every field of knowledge, they sometimes want to learn of God and they come to the Supreme Lord to render devotional service and thus transcend knowledge of the impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma and come to the personal conception of Godhead by the grace of the Supreme Lord or his pure devotees. On the whole, when the distressed, the inquisitive, and the seekers of knowledge and those who are in need of money are free from all material desires, and when they fully understand that material remuneration has nothing to do with spiritual improvement, they become pure devotees. As long as such a purified state is not attained, devotees in transcendental service to the Lord are tainted with creative activities, the search for mundane knowledge, etc. So one has to transcend all this before one can come to the stage of pure devotional service. Now we will move to the next verse, chapter number 7, verse number 17. Translation. Of this, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best. And for I am very dear to him, and he is dear to me. Purpose. Free from all contaminations of material desires, the distressed, the inquisitive, the penniless, and the seeker, after supreme knowledge, can all become pure devotees. But out of them, he who is in knowledge of the absolute truth and free from all material desires becomes a really pure devotee of the Lord. And of the four orders, the devotee who is in full knowledge and is at the same time engaged in devotional service to the Lord is the best. By searching after knowledge, one realizes that his self is different from his material body, and when further advanced, he comes to the knowledge of impersonal Brahman and Paramatma. When one is fully purified, he realizes that his constitutional position is to be the eternal servant of God. So, by association with pure devotees, the inquisitive, the disgraced, the seeker after material emulation, and the main knowledge all become themselves pure. But in the preparatory stage, the man who is in full knowledge of the Supreme Lord and is at the same time executing devotional service is very dear to the Lord. He who is situated in pure knowledge of the transcendence of the Supreme Personality of God is so protected in devotional service that material contamination cannot touch him. Now we will move to the next verse. Chapter number 7, verse number 18. Translation. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. Purpose. It is not that devotees who are less complete in knowledge and not dear to the Lord are not dear to the Lord. The Lord says that all are magnanimous because anyone who comes to the Lord for any purpose is called a Mahatma or a great soul. The devotees who want some benefit out of devotional service are accepted by the Lord because there is an exchange of affection. Out of affection, they ask the Lord for some material benefit, and when they get it, they become so satisfied that they also advance in devotional service. But the devotee in full knowledge is considered to be very dear to the Lord because his only purpose is to serve the Supreme Lord with love and devotion. Such a devotee cannot leave a second without contacting or serving the Supreme Lord. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is very fond of his devotee and cannot be separated from him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 9.4.68, the Lord says, we'll read only the translation. The devotees are always in my heart, and I am always in the hearts of all the devotees. The devotee doesn't know anything beyond me, and I also cannot forget the devotee. There's a very intimate relationship between me and the pure devotees. Pure devotees in full knowledge are never out of spiritual touch, and therefore they are very much dear to me. Now we will move to the next verse. Chapter number 7, verse number 19. Translation. After many births and deaths, he who is actually knowledge is in knowledge, surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes, and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Purport. The living entity, while executing devotional service or transcendental rituals after many, many births, may actually become situated in transcendental pure knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. In the beginning of spiritual realization, while one is trying to give up one's attachment to materialism, there is some leading towards impersonalism. But when the when one is further advanced, he can understand that there are activities in the spiritual life and that these activities constitute devotional service. Realizing this, he becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrenders to Him. As such, at times one can understand that Lord Sri Krishna's mercy is everything, that He is the cause of all causes, and that this material manifestation is not independent from Him. He realizes the material world to be a perverted reflection of spiritual varietatedness, and realizes that in everything there is a relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Thus, he thinks of everything in relation to Vasudeva or Shri Krishna. Such a universal vision of Vasudeva that precipitates one's full surrender to the Supreme Lord, Shri Krishna, as the highest goal. Such surrendered great souls are very rare. This verse is very nicely explained in the third chapter, verse number 14, 14 and 15 of the Svetavatara Upanishad. So we will read only the translation part. Lord Vishnu has thousands of heads, thousands of eyes, and thousands of feet, entirely encompassing the whole universe. He still extends beyond it by 10 fingers. Where He is, in fact, this entire universe. He is all that was and all that will be. He is the Lord of immortality and of all that is nourished by food. In the Chandogya Upanishad 5.1.15, it is said, न वै वाचो न चक्षुषी न सर्वाणि न मनंसि अक्षति प्राण इति एवस्ते प्राण ही एवैतानि सर्वाणि bhavanti. Translation. In the body of a living being, neither the power to speak, nor the power to see, nor the power to hear, nor the power to think is the prime factor. It is life, which is the center of all activity. Similarly, Lord Vasudeva, or the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is the prime entity in everything. In this body, there are powers of speaking, of seeing, or hearing, of mental activities, etc. But these are not important, it's not related to the Supreme Lord. And because Vasudev is all pervading and everything is Vasudev, the devotee surrenders in full knowledge. Reference from Bhagavad Gita 7.17 and 11.40. So this is the last verse of this particular section. Now we will just to summarize. We have seen in this section what are the different four kinds of impious persons who do not surrender to Krishna, and the opposite one also the four kinds of pious persons who do so. So just to do a small recap, whatever we have studied today. So basically the liberation from the laws of material nature has been always taught by the leaders of mankind with great planning and perseverance for many years. But if such liberation is attained by surrendering to Krishna, why don't they adopt this method? We have seen that. So in the verse number 15, which describes, we have seen four types of unqualified persons who do not surrender to Krishna and who sometimes pose themselves as leaders simply for material gain. In the verse number 16 to 19 on, we have seen, so it describes four types of persons who surrender to Krishna and how the wise man is the best because he doesn't desire some gain. So with this, we completed this particular section. And in the next session, we'll be start with the verse number 20 till verse number 25. And we'll be seeing how the demigod worshippers and impersonalists whose surrender is misplaced. So we will stop here. Hare Krishna.